This is More Than 5%, a podcast dedicated to covering the stories of women in sports. Whatever the sport, whatever the role, everyone is welcome. Now, let's join our hosts, Zoe Hicks and Carly Jackson, for a weekly conversation with women who inspire.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to More Than 5%. We are at episode 4 at this point, so thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for joining the journey. Today, we're going to be talking about how to transition from being an athlete in college to being a non-athlete out of college, or being a professional athlete out of college, like just changing your routine up a little bit and finding what works for you. We're going to start, as we always do, with some good shit to counteract our brain chemistry. Trying to find bad things, we have to counteract with good things. So, good shit. Carly, you go first because I feel like I always go first.
All right, we're switching it up here. All right, my good shit for the day for my gamers out there. I won a Fortnite game today with over 10 eliminations. So that was a good milestone for me. I love video games. Got to play video games this morning. So that's my good shit for the day.
I'm gonna pretend I know what that means. Good work. Good work.
Thank you.
Okay, so my good shit for the day. I actually have I'm going for dinner with a woman in baseball that I really look up to. She did a Zoom meeting for Team Canada baseball. I think it was during the COVID shutdown. So I think 2020, just talking about her experiences and her story. She played professional softball. She's now a hitting coach in the Cubs organization and an overall badass. So actually my boss at work set us up to go. All three of us are going for dinner, so I get to pick her brain and talk to her, and I can get her on the pod for sure. So yeah, I'm going for dinner with Rachel Folden. If you know anything about baseball or women in baseball, she's big deal. She's out here, doing the baseball stuff just like I am. Huge deal. She threw BP at Wrigley Field the other day. I follow her on Instagram, so I keep up with all of her things. But yeah, so we're having dinner Tuesday. We're having dinner Tuesday with me and my boss and her. So hopefully I can make new friends, and that's my good shit. And I'm really looking forward to it.
That is some good shit. I hope the food's great too.
Let's get right into our pod episode today. Okay, so topic today: how to transition from being a collegiate athlete to not being a collegiate athlete, or into a different kind of phase of your career. Like for Carly specifically, she was the 3rd overall draft pick in the 2020 draft. So she went right from college to playing professionally. I went from college to men's baseball summer ball, which was the time, and then to professional overseas. And then I came back and, got a job and started working. So 2 very different experiences. And I think we can kind of find a spot in the middle to hopefully help some people with their transition and find helpful tips in that regard.
Yeah, I think this is a really fun topic to talk about. And not only college athletics. I mean, at some point, everybody's athletic career comes to a close. And I think, hopefully a lot of people can relate to this and, maybe share some stories in the comments and that sort of thing. But I just think this is a really important thing because transition isn't easy, and transition from either high school athletics or college athletics into something else is a really big challenge as a human being, as an individual, as a member of a team, as an athlete. It's not easy. It ain't easy being breezy. So we're just here to just talk about some of this stuff. And I think this is a really cool topic.
Absolutely. So I did a little bit of research online, and I found a resource through the University of Baylor's athletic website. And so they're talking about how difficult the transition is. We both understand how difficult it is, right? Thinking about, being done with something that has been such an important part of your life for a long time. That's difficult, right? They say on the website, that signs of a difficult transition include depression, feelings of hopelessness, feeling isolated, decreased confidence, overwhelming feeling of loss, and loss of identity. And all of these things they make so much sense, right? Like as an athlete, you're linked to that for a long portion of your life, right? Mm-hmm. Immediately when people see, Zoe Hicks, oh, like she plays baseball, she plays softball, like she's an athlete, right? Especially with you too, like you're known on your social medias as Carly Jackson, the goaltender, the professional goaltender. So those types of things, it's really hard to unlink that and kind of unlink those emotions that you tied to those things, right? As an athlete, it's very hard to not tie your self-worth to your performance, right? You may get in a really deep hole when you don't perform well, So I think that's tough in your athletic career, and even tougher when your athletic career is over, because you don't have those things that can bring you up. When I was feeling crappy, I'd go to the cages and I'd hit a bunch of line drives in the cage and I'd feel so much better, right? So those things, you have to find those things in life. So I think the number one thing that we want to talk about and like open up the conversation about is finding a routine in everyday life. As an athlete, you go from a pretty strict routine in college, like lift, then class, then, lunch, then practice, then video, then whatever your schedule looks like, it's pretty penciled in for you. There's not a lot of wiggle room. There's not a lot of open space. If you're not doing something, you're probably studying. And then if you're not studying, you're probably sleeping. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of routine in that already.
I think that's the reality of college athletics, and maybe 99% of people I've spoken to, or at least from my own experience, is that is your identity. And I mean, I went to what might be considered a medium sized to smaller school, and you go into your classes and you're wearing the jacket, you're wearing the sweater, you're wearing the things that you would wear because you're coming from your field, your locker room, your whatever, and you're an athlete. You have to report to your teachers and tell them that you're an athlete, so you're going to miss things on the weekend, and just everything with your identity, with what you're doing, whether that's classroom work, obviously your athletic work, that is a big part of who you are and what you're doing every single day. Right? You are an athlete all the time, whether you want to shut that off or not. And that's just that's the reality of it. For 4 years, that's what you're doing. And that's who you're identified as. That's who you're associated with. So it's incredibly difficult to find who you are outside of sports when, 95% of your day is working towards being a good teammate, being a good athlete, producing results, being successful, because there's this microscope or a spotlight on you because of what you're doing. There's a big pressure that you feel the need to perform all the time. So I completely understand the relationship between, maybe questioning who you are, questioning your self-worth, mental health problems with depression, anxiety, and a multitude of other things based off of your performance in what is really one category of your life, one thing that you do, but because of the nature of the culture and the way that it is also everything you do. So that everything is heavily intertwined, and it is just so important, I think, to be able to find those connections of things that connect to you, who you are, even if you were to stop playing tomorrow.
Definitely. And you think about this whole idea is like, it's a feeling of grief. You're grieving a part of you that isn't a thing anymore. It's not a reality anymore. You know what I mean? Like when I graduated from college and finished my eligibility, I had no idea that I was going to keep playing. I never thought I was gonna, lace them up and play in between the lines ever again. I thought, okay, I'm gonna be a coach. I have to, get over this and just move on, instead of, grieving a part of my life that I lost. That's not there anymore. That's something that I spent a lot of time on, a lot of effort in, and it just kind of ends. You have a lot of memories and you have a lot of things that you can look back on and really appreciate, but it's done. It's over. There's no moving forward with it. So that's kind of the toughest thing, is just to accept it. I think one thing that really helps, and this Baylor website goes into detail about this a lot, but one thing that really helps is to reflect on your career, sit down with it and think, what did I learn by being an athlete? What am I proud of? What are the things that I'm grateful for? Like these relationships that I built, these friendships, all these teammates, the connections that I made, right? One of my strength coaches that I have in college now works with the Guardians in their minor league facility, and I see him, twice a week now. So those connections that you build, like, you might not know it, but they kind of come around. And so those types of things you can look back on and you can be grateful for, and you can, have a happy feeling when thinking about that. This whole process of moving on is grief, and it's tough, but you can also look back on memories and maybe have a little happy cry. I think that helps me specifically, right? Of like, do you remember this awesome time when we were on this bus and this person did something funny? Like those things are awesome to look back on. So I would say, first and foremost, if you're struggling with this, really sit down and like write it down, type it out, print off some pictures, like sit with it, right? And really feel how grateful you were, or all the things that you can sit back and say, I'm proud of that. I did those things. And now I can move on and figure out how to transition into being me in a different phase of my life. I think it's really important to sit with it instead of pushing it down. It might make me sad right now, but these are things I'm going to tell my kids about someday, about these stories and these experiences that I had while playing in college or in high school or whatever.
And I think too, there's also like a period of mourning when you switch teams, or you switch, like I know for me personally, like leaving Maine. So I played at the University of Maine for 5 years. leaving Maine was actually one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life, and it had a huge impact on me. And it took me probably almost a year and a half to 2 years to really sit with and process that my time there was done. I loved my experience there. I would have been probably a college athlete forever if I could have been, like, just study and play hockey. And, that fueled my goals to now playing professional hockey. And that's what I do full time now. But there was a transition period, right, where, again, I wasn't sure if I was going to keep playing or not. I didn't know if the opportunity was there. I didn't know if I would make it, right? And there was a lot of question marks. But being able to mourn these different memories of your life, or just process those things, right, and recognize that, like, yeah, I think of a lot of jokes and games and memories from my time there and how fun it was, and I miss it a lot of the time. But I also just reminisce and try to think of the positives and, bring up the good shit, right? There's always negative emotions and experiences with everything that you do. But to be able to reflect upon that time in a positive way, because you've put so much time, effort, energy, love, devotion into something, fuck yeah, you want to feel positive about it. You want to feel good things when you think about your career with this high school team or that club team or that professional team or whatever it is. It's so important to just, I think, control our thoughts in a positive way so that, this experience that changed a lot of who we are can be seen in a good way, because I hope that it was a good experience for you. I know for me personally, it was a very good experience, but for a long time, it was hard to think about because I missed it so much. And then now I think I've processed the information. I've processed that, I'm not a college athlete anymore. I'm a professional athlete. And, to be able to be like, okay, yeah, that 5 years of my life was amazing. Loved it. Every minute of it. I would do it again if I could. But also, too, all of those things that I miss or that I loved, whatever, got me here now. And I use those things now. There's still things that I learned in college that I use all the time now. Like, one of the great things about the school that I went to is we were provided free therapy. So I was able to go to a therapist. I was able to talk to a counselor. It was awesome. So I took full advantage of it because, it was free and it was supported and it was an excellent, excellent resource. So in one of my years in college, I was going to therapy. I was going through some very personal things that were really challenging for me. And one of the things that I pride myself on, something that I'm very good at as a goaltender and as an athlete, is I'm able to hyper focus on a plastic rubber disc for 60 minutes. Like this insane focus where nothing else matters but a simple task of stopping a puck, right? So that's something I've developed over a lot of time and hours and energy. And I was in therapy and, I was trying to get out of a situation with a friend and I just couldn't find myself to do it. I would always give in and never stay true to the person who I was. And I would always just kind of cater to what they needed and not what I needed. And my therapist, we were talking about hockey and he was like, this skill of yours to be able to hyper focus and just be able to go in and get the job done. He's like, you're good at that. Can you use that skill that you've learned as a goaltender and apply that to your life? Because you know that you need to do this personal task. You know what the objective is. So can you use the skill of hyper focus and attention and understanding what you need to do for those 60 minutes or that one conversation to be able to go in and get it done and do what's right for you and move on? And I just think that was one of the most valuable lessons I learned as a human, using my skills that I learned as an athlete and applying them to my own personal well-being. I still think about that conversation probably on a weekly basis, if I'm being honest, and being able to not just there's amazing things about sports, right? Like the memories, the laughs, teammates, people, but the challenges you go through and the skills you develop, those things can be applied to so many other things if you just dig a little deeper and use the things that you've put the effort in to be able to develop.
Well, that is a perfect segue into our next point from my notes. Yeah, so what I have written down is remembering the best parts of sports and finding a way to incorporate those things into life. So like you said, those skills that you work on throughout sports, like how to develop them into life, how to apply them to things that are happening in reality, right? Not in the sports arena. And I think you can look at it in so many different ways, right? The best parts of sport. You might love the team atmosphere. So you could use that, when trying to find a job. Like you specifically work best in a team atmosphere. You find somewhere that's really connected, really close, feels like a family, like those types of things. That might be really good for you. You may love the routine of it. You may love the physical activity of sport. And then you can find something that's very similar, right? When I transferred, there was a month and a bit that I had no access to any facilities. So, it was really hard for me to find a place to swing, find a place to lift. And I wanted to stay as athletic as I possibly could. So I did as many different things as I could. I did like yoga. I was doing pickleball. I was doing all these different things to stay athletic and hopefully find a way to become more athletic in this weird time in my life. So yeah, stuff like that, like find something that you can also be really excited about. You might not be a fan of weightlifting, but you had to do it at college for your sport. Find something else that you like. Maybe you love Pilates. Maybe you love to run distance, but for your sport, you never did because, you know, your sport was fast twitch and that's slow twitch and whatever your trainers had that belief system, right? Like we don't jog that often in softball. You sprint to a spot and then you wait at that spot, right? So a lot of our training was fast twitch training, how to change direction, how to run full speed, all that type of stuff. And then when I was done, I figured out I like to run. I like to just like get lost in my thoughts or in a podcast or, you know, in the woods, whatever, and just run. And I had never thought about that until I had the opportunity, right? I wasn't super sore from practice. I wasn't, you know, lifting really heavy for training. Like I had the freedom to go and figure out that I really liked that. So I make sure to put that into my routine now. I have like a run after my upper body lifts. So stuff like that, I can find those things that I really liked. I liked the physical activity, but I wasn't a huge fan of, you know, some of the things that we did. Like I like to lift, but there's a lot of stuff that I was like, I hate this. I hated like interval training. I hated any type of like fitness testing. I think everyone does. I have yet to find someone who's like, I loved the beep test. I loved running 300s. I loved, what is it? Gassers. I loved like I have yet to find those people that are like, I love gassers.
I would like to hear what the mindset is on that because I'd like to learn. You gotta learn to love this stuff, right?
Yeah, true. I would like to know what is happening in your brain for you to be like, this
I'm
is
just so
great.
curious. I gotta know.
Absolutely. But yeah, like taking those things that you liked from sport or like even the social aspect. Because one thing with sports is it's basically like built-in friends.
Building family, really.
Oh yeah, family, right? Like
Because
you see these people every single day.
your teammates see you at such a vulnerable position every day,
Yeah.
whether you know you want them to or not.
Right.
Because
It's
they're
like
gonna see you
yeah.
struggling physically at least once a day.
Yeah.
More often than not, more than that.
Yeah. And if you've ever been on a sports team, you also see your teammates struggling mentally or like whatever the situation. Like whenever I would walk into the locker room, there'd be someone talking about some relationship thing and then some other person was talking about some school thing, whatever. You're sharing a very large time portion and passion of your life with them, as well as your coaches and all that type of stuff. Like that group is just like naturally going to get so close based on time and like the things that are happening. So it's really important to continue that when you're done with sport is like, you know, stay in touch with your teammates or reach out to your coaches or, you know what I mean? Or continue to build that with new people that you meet, right? Be able to, you know, find a new friend, find new hobbies, find new things that you have in common with that person. And then, you know, continue to build that support system that you might not already have, you know, as a team, you have everybody's back. It's just kind of understood. So
you're forced to, whether, I mean,
yeah,
hopefully you want to, but whether you want to or not, you have, you know, let's say on a hockey team, you have 20 other people that you're friends with.
You're going through the same thing together. Like it's shared experience everywhere. Like sports are social, inherently social, right? Or the fact that you have a platform and can be an activist. Take those things that you learn in sport and apply them to your life. If you're at a big school and you get interviewed all the time and you get really good at being interviewed, maybe you're someone who public speaks. Maybe you find a way to give back to the community in that way of like sharing your experiences. I think that's really important is to just see what worked for you in that sport, because a lot of sports are very like carbon copied, like we have to do this to be good at this sport, so all the team is going to do this, and it might not be the best for that individual athlete, but as a group it is best for the group. It's like one of those things, like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So in the sports setting, you know, practice is geared around how can we help the most people in our time. So I mean, I think after sports are done and you're outside of that team atmosphere, you can find what works for you personally. If you really like that team, you can find your way back in it. As far as college athletics goes, I think everyone can agree that a routine is pretty aggressive, right? They pencil out everything for you. They kind of give you where to be, what to be doing, and what to be wearing, basically, in every single aspect. For me, I loved that. I think
what to be wearing. Can we
just seriously
acknowledge that? No, I mean it's very real and very true. I just think it's super interesting, and I guess it kind of plays to the role of like if you have a job afterwards, you might have to wear a suit and tie every day,
right?
Or whatever it is. But yeah, it's like, you know, 12 hours of the day where you
told what to do, what to wear, who to be with, what time to be there, all that type of stuff, right? So for me specifically, I love routines. I think routines are awesome. So when I got out of that and I was playing overseas professionally, and the only routine we had was, practice Tuesday, Thursdays, game was on the weekend. I had to figure it out for myself because I was not the type of person to just go with the flow and be like, oh, I'll just sleep in and then I'll see how I feel, whatever. I had an alarm set every single day. I was like, okay, today I'm going to go on a bike ride. And then tomorrow I'm going to go for a walk. And then I'm going to, get some coffee at this time. This time sounds good. And then I'm going to have lunch. Because if I didn't do that, I would just like sit in bed and feel like crap and get nothing done. So for me, I needed to almost fake a routine and make one up for myself to be able to function and do the things that I needed to do. Obviously now with where I'm working, I'm at work very early in the morning and my routine is very set also because it's, around sports and all that type of stuff. But even now I have a routine of like Wednesdays and Sundays are my off day from lifting. And that's when I go to Trader Joe's and to get my groceries. Like I have a routine set in place just because that's how my brain works. That's how I function very well, is with a routine. And I think knowing yourself and understanding who you are, and like if you hated that in college, you probably won't gravitate toward it when you're done college. If you loved it, you probably will naturally do that. So I think just like learn about yourself.
Structure in college is it's intense. It's so intense. And I would say during my experience when I was at college, I loved it. Like I was like, yep, I'm going to be here at this time. I'm going to be here doing this. Like I would say maybe kind of a unique college experience in terms of the degree I chose. So I studied athletic therapy or athletic training at the University of Maine. So part of that requirement was I had to be a medical personnel and athletic trainer for another Division I team on campus. So I was not only doing my own practices, my own lifts, I was also covering other teams, other sports, other facilities as a trained medical professional or soon to be. So it was kind of like double duty in terms of hockey and then maybe baseball or maybe softball or football or soccer or track or swimming or whatever it was. So it was like I wasn't playing two sports at the same time, but I was playing my own sport and then I was a staff member for another sport. So I was very like, yep, gonna be here this time, gonna be here doing this all the time. Loved it, thrived in it. When I graduated, it was a COVID year. So I graduated in 2020, right when COVID hit. We had played our hockey's playoffs. 2 days later, school was not canceled, but everybody was going home. COVID had hit, everything was shut down. So it was a very abrupt stop. And I know a lot of athletes have a lot of experiences around COVID and the intensity and the abruptness of everything changing. But I had no idea what the fuck to do. I had not a clue. And I was so used to that structure. I thrived in that structure. I was lost. I was like completely lost. I had no idea anymore because everything was closed. You know the spiel. Everything inaccessible. You just were stuck alone with your thoughts, right? So me personally, I actually struggled with a bit of depression and anxiety during that time because I was so used to being like, yep, this time I got to be there. I have to be early or this or that or that. And then when that didn't exist anymore, I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And at first I was like, okay, well, I have to create structure. I have to do structure. I need structure again. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my mind. And I started doing that. But then I started doing the intense opposite of that, where it wasn't working for me because I was making all this structure. And then I was just almost putting myself in a circle of expectation. And I need to be on schedule or else I'm not a success or I was unsuccessful. So from that experience of trying to learn how to adjust from being in this intense structure all the time to discovering what actually like just worked for me. So now, yes, there's things I like to have structure throughout my day, but I consider myself a very, very go with the flow kind of person. I just kind of like to take the punches as they're thrown. Yes, I like to be prepared. I like to be early, but I almost like to schedule my time and being like, hey, I have 3 hours where I can do whatever I want. It's not like, oh yeah, well, maybe I'll journal for an hour or I'll answer emails for an hour or, la-di-da-di-da. It's like, okay, no, I'm going to get what I need to get done in this 30 minutes and then, or an hour or whatever it is. And then the next 3 hours, we'll see what the heck I feel like doing. And that might be playing video games all day. That might be doing a puzzle. That might be going outside and playing, whatever it is. But being able to, adjust after college to being like, okay, I'm a human being, like, who doesn't need to be scheduled every minute of every day, and being able to explore just whatever I might be feeling. I think that is just so important as a human being. To be able to have time to just exist has been the most valuable thing that I've learned after adjusting, post intense scheduling of being a collegiate athlete, is just being able to exist and just be without any expectation and just be yourself without having to accomplish anything. I think that that's a really powerful thing, is to be able to sit with yourself and to be. And I think you learn a lot about who you are. And I think you learn about a lot of things that you like, or maybe that you don't like. But I think that that is definitely a challenge for people exiting a chapter of their life, and specifically collegiate athletics.
And completely flipping this on its head, we've talked a lot about the negatives of, grieving this big transition and leaving your sport and being done with something that you were super passionate about. There are so many positives when it comes to being done with sports also. Like, no, first and foremost, the time that you have outside, like, to just do things, to just literally do things. Like, especially if you went from collegiate sports to being done with college and done with sports, because you don't have classes and you don't have practice or lift or video or whatever. There's so much time to find hobbies that you like, to spend time with your family. Like, I know for me specifically, I miss so many family weddings because I was at school or I was doing something with sports or whatever. Like, I now don't have to miss those things. I can go to those things. That is a positive, is that I don't have this thing that's taking a lot of my time up. As much as I love it, as much as I'm super passionate about it, it still is the reality of it that it takes a lot of my time, it takes a lot of my space of, like, now I can spend more time with my dog. Now I can spend more time with my family. There are so many positives of no sports. I think that it kind of gets lost in these conversations of, like, oh, well, it's this big loss. It's this big loss, but you're also gaining so much, right? You have room to grow. You have room for hobbies. You have room for more, of an individualized way to live your life. You're not fitting in this team puzzle. You're yourself walking around being a human being, right? Being a human being on a daily basis. I think that's just like something that we can focus on. As tough as it is, as much grief as it is a loss, 100%. Totally understand that. But there's also positives. There's a thing you can look at and say, okay, I don't have to be, so sore that I can't walk up the stairs, or that I can't sit on the toilet to take a pee. Like, I can lift or I can work out in a way that makes me feel good without tearing my muscles apart. So those types of things are so positive when it comes to no sports. But yeah, just like having something that isn't taking up so much of your time. You have time to do other things.
You get to experience, I think, a lot of parts of life, or that you have to miss out on, or you might have to sacrifice. Especially, I think, in high school athletics and collegiate athletics, like, there's just it's a huge investment of time, effort, money from your family, from yourself, like getting to practice, coming home from practice, practicing. Speaking from my own experience, like, something that I actually am celebrating this year is, this is my first time I'll be able to go home for Thanksgiving in probably 9 or 10 years. Like, I'm going to be able to have turkey dinner with my family, and I am just, like, super pumped about it. Like, but that's the reality, I think, is you have a lot of athletes who miss out on, or I don't want to say miss out, because you're making an investment in something that you love. But part of that is you do have to sacrifice life things that you get to experience later. So I think that's one of the really fun parts too about, transitioning outside of athletics, is you get to experience, things like that, or things that you haven't had the time or the energy or the resources, the money, whatever, to look into. Like, maybe you're trying to learn an instrument, or, make new friends, or develop a relationship, or whatever that is. I just think that, there's so many amazing things about sports. Like, I'm obsessed with being an athlete, but I also understand that there's so many more things that I have yet to experience, that can be wonderful in tons of different ways. One of the big things about collegiate athletics is you're around people a lot of the time. You have people checking in on you. If you don't show up to practice, one, you're probably going to get in trouble. Two, you're probably going to have your captains or coaches calling you, asking where the hell you are. Three, like, there's so many different categories, like, in terms of academics, athletics, whatever, people who are always checking up on you all the time, making sure you're supposed to be where you are. So transitioning out of that, like, in my experience, even just going to the pros and things like that, it is completely different. You become a very different human being, and you have to look after those little things on your own. And I learned how to do those little things, thankfully, from amazing people during my time in college. But still, learning those things and then doing them for yourself, man, it's hard. It's really hard. And anybody can speak to their experiences of growing up, and that's exactly what it is. But being able to still go to the gym on time, show up on time, right, and to do your mobility, to do your bedtime, to get to bed on time, right, and to eat the right things, whatever, without having somebody looking over your shoulder all the time, is is difficult, because there's not somebody pushing you, even a teammate being like, hey, dude, yeah, maybe we should make dinner at home instead of going out tonight, something like that. But I think transitioning out of such a structured environment, you got to use the skills that you learned then to understand that it's like best for your overall well-being. So just being able to continue that with your integrity that you've developed through your time, and something that you really care about, and use that to take care of your body, to take care of your mind, go to therapy, go outside, touch some grass, like it's very easy, I think, to, when nobody's watching you anymore, to be like, oh, well, now it doesn't matter. I can do anything. And, that's totally fun and exciting, and like kind of like a, I don't know, kind of like a teenage dream kind of vibe. You get your first car, you're like, oh, let's go. And there's a balance to it, right? But I think it's fun figuring those things out, but it's also really hard. But being able to just learn from your experiences.
I think with a team aspect, like you're doing these things because one, you want yourself to be able to perform in those moments for your team, and you want to be able to like contribute so that you can win. When it comes down to just like doing things to keep you healthy and to keep you happy and all that stuff, and because you deserve to like be taken care of, it almost is like less important. You know what I'm saying? You're like, oh, well, if I don't do this, like it's just for me, right? I'm not cheating reps for my team. I'm not cheating reps for my coach. Like, it's just me. I'll just make it up tomorrow and then whatever. It kind of, there's a lack of accountability because it's just for yourself. Like, oh, well, right now I want to stay in bed instead of go to the gym. But like the goal is happy and healthy, like for tomorrow you, like doing things today for future you to be thankful for. So, I mean, just like shifting that mindset of like, oh, I do this for my team. Like I take extra reps, so I'm good for my team. So I perform for my team. Like just realizing that you deserve good things also. You deserve, a commitment, someone to show up. Like you deserve you to show up every day for you. That's all we have for you guys today. Thank you for listening to another episode of More Than 5%. I am Zoe Hicks.
And your co-host, Carly Jackson.
So our action item for today is going to be a little bit of a shameless plug. Follow our personal social media accounts. So I am at Zoe Hicks with 3 S's on Instagram, and then at Zoe Hicks 10 on the Twitter. That's Zoe, ZOE. There's no Y on it. So just ZOE HICKS on both the things. And yeah, go Siege.
Yeah. So you can follow me at Tough Mustard, spelled TUFF Mustard, on pretty much everything social except for my Instagram is Carly Jackson 97. If you're free next Thursday, I'm free next Thursday. So if you're free, I'm free.
Are you free next Thursday?
Are you free next Thursday or any other day?